right. Did you want to do your spiel? Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Stessie. I am with the Palm Beach County Division of Built Environment Risk Reduction, formerly known as the Office of Resilience. I'm joined today by our division director in the back, Megan Houston, and the project consulting team that has helped guide us these last 4 years. A lot has changed since then, including our office name from OOR to Burr. But what has not changed is our goal of making sure that Palm Beach County stays sustainable and resilient for the future. So I'm going to welcome you guys and thank you so much for being here tonight and pass the mic over to Georgia from Tetra Tech, who's going to go through our plan and then get some feedback from you guys. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone in the room and online. My name is Georgia Vince with Tetra Tech, and we've been working with the county for 3 years, over 3 years, on this project. And tonight we're going to give you a recap of what we've been doing, outline our resiliency plan, and talk about where we're going in the future. We will be doing some interactive polling. There's a Menti survey that will be towards the end of the presentation. And so hopefully folks online and folks in the room will be able to participate in that Menti survey. As I mentioned, project overview, we'll talk about the risk assessments that were the basis of the resiliency plan. We'll talk about the resiliency action goals, the implementation projects that we've identified, and questions and answers we'll take at the end. It was a team of folks that helped us pull this plan together, including Chen Moore and Associates, S.A. Nelson and Brazaga are here with us tonight. Erin Deedy, PA, she is our land planner and attorney that's been helping us through this process. And Clearview Geographic was our GIS analysis firm. Important terms to keep in mind as we go through the presentation today. Adaptation is the process of adjustment to expected climate and its effects in order to moderate harm. Assets include the people, the resources, the ecosystem, infrastructure, and the services they provide. Mitigation is a human intervention to offset or reduce emissions and enhance sequestration of greenhouse gases. Resiliency is the capacity of a community, business, or natural environment to prevent, withstand, respond to, and recover from an event. Retrofitting means modifying infrastructure, buildings, or systems to enhance that resiliency. And risk is the potential total cost of something of value that is damaged or lost. Sensitivity means the degree to which a system, population, or resource might be affected by a climate hazard. So we have a wide range of resiliency goals for the project. We certainly and foremost want to address climate hazards by implementing strategies to mitigate those hazards and improve resiliency of the county assets. We look to also improve resiliency of infrastructure by reinforcing and retrofitting those assets, ensuring service continuity. We look also to ensure that where we can, we provide environmental benefits to promote environmental health through green infrastructure. We also want to ensure meaningful community engagement and safeguarding neighborhoods. This has just been an underlying theme throughout the process. We've done a lot to try and get involved with the community at different events and having public meetings. So we really look for stakeholder input. And the last is to streamline implementation of these adaptation measures to prioritize feasible and cost-effective adaptation strategies and reduce operational burdens. That's the basis of the Resiliency Action Plan. Back when we started the project, we identified a large amount of critical assets that are outlined in the statute, which Aaron will talk through. And we also identified the critical assets and areas of geographic risk and the vulnerability assessments, and that was completed in 2024. So once we realized what the risks were, we developed an adaptation plan, including strategies and projects to reduce the risk to those climate hazards. And finally, we've developed a resiliency action plan to implement those adaptation strategies and address the sensitivity to those climate stressors. And that adaptation plan includes strategies, policy, and funding that will help move these projects forward. I'm going to hand it over to Aaron to speak through our climate risk assessment.
So the climate risk assessment focused on the community's assets, the important things that serve our community, hospitals, schools, roads, pump stations, all of those different assets. And we looked at various types of flooding impact, also impact from heat, drought, rainfall events, wildfires, and flooding and coastal erosion. What that did was it kind of set the groundwork for what potential projects and what potential modifications the county may need to make over a certain time frame. Usually in 5 or 10-year increments, we look at to make sure that we are keeping up with these impacts as we project them. So we utilized localized data from the county, but also where we could enhance that data from state or federal data sets, we did that as well. This provided a foundation for our overall resilience action plan, which is enabling us to bounce back from events and these types of climate stressors over time. So the top hazards that we identified were coastal erosion in the eastern parts of the county, but also in our meeting, it came up last night that we're dealing with canal erosion and erosion around within the interior of Lake Okeechobee. So erosion, we should be looking at it from the broader sense. We looked at extreme heat, periods of hotter days. We looked at non-coastal flooding, which is when we get those big downpour rainfall events, but it's not impacted by a storm or a hurricane. And then we looked at the various types of flooding and how we combined those types of flooding impacts over time. And what came out of that process was identifying 25 different, we call them flooding hotspots, because the predominant climate stressor that we looked at was flooding. These are not numbered in any particular order. It's just a way for us to identify the areas. But 14 of those areas were in the eastern part of the county, and the remaining areas were out in the glades and western communities, and those are identified on this map. We looked at extreme heat, and typically what we're seeing is more of those really hot days in the summertime when we have prolonged periods of 90, 95, or even higher degree heat. And generally, what we're seeing is a way to mitigate some of that heat impact is through tree planting or cooling centers. We want to make sure that we're taking care of vulnerable populations with regard to heat. And we looked at classifying those in high, medium, and low exposure levels. So we do know that we are seeing more of those periods of heat over time. And now this provides a mechanism for the county to start planning projects and measures to do something about it. The assets that we looked at are dictated by the state. They tell us what we have to look at, but generally it's parks and natural areas because those are part of the community's infrastructure as well. Roads and bridges or transportation facilities, your linear facilities like water, wastewater, government buildings, emergency response facilities. And then there are also assets that the county doesn't own and control, like for instance, the school district, they own their buildings. But finally, we looked at utility and communications infrastructure as well. And so out of all of this vulnerability data gathering and assessment, we created the Resilience Action Plan. In it, we have actual strategies to deal with these climate hazards, and we have goals associated with that. We have prioritized what those strategies are, generally measures that we need to take in the nearer term versus longer term. We looked at a pathway to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, which helps with energy efficiency and air quality. And it really helps us develop a path that links to the county's policy structure, but also their project management structure in order for us to implement these projects with a tracking mechanism so the county can hold itself accountable for making sure that those outcomes are achieved over time. And so goals and objectives for the various adaptation projects were developed. One of the primary goals was where we could achieve co-benefits or environmental benefits at the same time that we were dealing with the climate stressors. That was an important thing, as well as distribution of the projects equitably across the focus areas to make sure that we are addressing both areas in the eastern and western parts of the county. This kind of breaks down the types of projects. The adaptation projects, 15% are like what I would call harder infrastructure, resilience or mitigation projects. 21% look at delivering environmental benefits such as increased tree canopy or increased open space. 20% address the climate hazards that we looked at, mostly flooding, and 22% streamline the implementation of adaptation measures and operational efficiency within county departments and changing the way that we look at projects and plan for projects overall. And then the last 22% are making sure that we continue the process of communicating with the community as well as safety neighborhood issues. We also created some policy recommendations, which we are continuing to discuss with the county right now. One of the biggest is stormwater management, drainage, making sure that drainage systems account for future conditions and tidal conditions if you're in the eastern part of the county. We've looked at ways that we can potentially increase or not necessarily increase, but improve landscaping regulations, shoreline regulations, floodplain management. We've created some model policies that the county can potentially adopt, and we have reviewed a new resiliency element of the comprehensive plan that the county is looking at. So making sure that that policy structure is in place so when we have new elected decision makers, they get held accountable as well to implement those policies over time. Different adaptation project types for natural resources. One of the things that we looked at was the tree canopy. For instance, after we have a major storm event, the trees get knocked down, and that reduces the canopy, which impacts our ability to create shade and the heat that's really within the urban and exurban areas overall. So making sure that we have the ability to expand that tree canopy has a lot of benefits, also including drainage, because trees are a mechanism to help with drainage. Part of our recommendations include a shoreline ordinance or making the municipal shoreline ordinances a little bit more cohesive so we're protecting against future conditions, redevelopment policy, the installation of living shorelines, which are more natural features because nature is our best defense against some of these flooding events. Mangrove islands and working on beach restoration and beach renourishment as well. Community facilities are important because they can serve as a hub with multiple benefits to the community beyond just those that the building was constructed to perform. And so enhancing shade, with our community buildings, emergency shelter upgrades, hardening those facilities to make sure that they are flood resistant and they are back up and running after a storm event are all really important strategies for community facilities, as well as park enhancements. That was something that we looked at. Are there areas of our parks where we can have dual benefit, for instance, storing more water after a storm event? Infrastructure and utilities, we've suggested an overall stormwater master planning effort to look at the county's drainage infrastructure and how that plugs into regional drainage infrastructure like that of the water management district or the municipalities. Where are there gaps that the county can potentially fill? Septic to sewer conversions, rehabilitating the existing infrastructure that we have with lift and pump stations, making sure that those will function, that the electrical will function during and after storm events. Stormwater management improvements, actual drainage in the ground pumps and conveyance, and drainage for roads, because we know that during rain events, the more rain events that we are seeing, roads can become impassable, and that can curtail emergency vehicles getting to you if you need them as well. And so I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Georgia.
All right. So one of the other components to the Resiliency Action Plan is an emission reduction recommendations. So we performed a greenhouse gas emissions analysis and looked at the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases and came up with some recommendations on how to improve or reduce greenhouse gases. So we have them in 4 categories, starting with transportation, supporting a widespread electric vehicle adoption and expanding public electric vehicle charging network, increasing transit service, and pursue transit-oriented development, continue phase-in battery of electric buses. For buildings, promoting energy efficiency, encouraging electrification of space and water heating, support on-site solar installations, and aligning upgrades with equipment replacement cycles. So as equipment is replaced, you upgrade it to the most efficient equipment. Agriculture, there's several practices that we outlined to encourage the stakeholders to implement, including cover cropping, no-tilling or reduced till farming, composting applications, balancing emission strategies with agricultural stakeholders and needs, and refrigerants and industrial processes, transitioning to low refrigerants, improving leak detection and maintenance and proper disposal, and then combining these actions can reduce emissions for up to 99% for the refrigerants and industrial processes. So that was all rolled into our Resiliency Action Plan. We developed, in addition to having the policy recommendations and the greenhouse gas reduction recommendations, we outlined several projects in a couple of different categories that I'll go through, but each of the projects has includes a project description, the goals that are achieved by the project for the Resiliency Action Plan, rough order of magnitude costs of those projects, timeframes for implementation of the projects, the project prioritization based on the weighted evaluation and the criteria ranking that was used to prioritize the projects. We identified lead agency and partners, which could be the county department or another organization that could support project implementation. And then we identified funding sources for potential grants so that these projects can be supported with additional funds from outside grant agencies. And then lastly, in development are conceptual designs for 30 of those prioritized projects. So we have the categories for the projects. As you know, projects go through multiple phases from planning to design. You have to find the funding and then you can implement or construct the project. So we have outlined in the action plan several priority projects that are already underway, meaning they are funded by grant or as a capital improvement project. They may be in design or they may be in under construction or about to start construction. The prioritized projects, these are the ones that are um, the next phase of projects. So they are ready for they are not ready for implementation, but they're part of the implementation plan. So they include conceptual projects of the 30 that I mentioned that are underway. They include cost estimates that are under development, and we are looking to identify grant funding and other funding sources for those projects. And then we have other recommended adaptation measures that I'll go through in a couple of slides. So here's our list of early implementation projects. It includes improvements to the water treatment plant, number 11. This one is out in Belglade, including floodproofing and other plant upgrades. The North County Shoreline Protection or Beach Renourishment Project, Peanut Island Shoreline Armoring Project, Sand Transfer Plant Resiliency. So there are 2 sand transfer plants along the beach that are under evaluation to ensure that they can meet future sea level rise projections. And Ocean Inland Park is a coastal resiliency project looking at seawalls and other shoreline protection. The C-51 reservoir is phase 2 out in western Palm Beach County, and then looking at drought water supply to provide that to the Loxahatchee River. And lastly, the Dubois Park Tidal Lagoon. So those projects are all in one form or fashion underway by the county. And this list is those prioritized projects that the county is looking to implement in the near future. So these include Carlin Park's stormwater management. You can see the picture on the right-hand side. Drainage improvements for problematic roads. We have several roads that were identified by the county, working with the county departments and prioritize those. And so we're looking to get some drainage improvements for those. Septic to sewer conversions. I think we all recognize that septic is an outdated way to treat our waste. And so getting those septic systems online is important not only for water quality, but also for human health. We have 2 wastewater treatment plants out in the western Palm Beach County, out in Belglade, that are also looking for stormwater improvements there to ensure those water treatment plants can maintain operation during extreme rain events and flooding. We have proposed a multi-purpose building that can serve as a resiliency hub. This one gets a lot of attention because it's pretty state-of-the-art ideas. It is in conceptual design, but there is not a location or funding set aside yet for this project. The L2 pump station resiliency study looks to ensure that that pump station, which moves stormwater out towards the coast, is going to be able to be maintained in future sea level rise conditions. And then there are several lift stations that have been identified for rehabilitation that really need to be upgraded so that they can function during extreme rain events. And here locally, the Westgate Community Center, there is a gymnasium that we're looking at upgrading to turn it into a shelter for emergency situations. And the Robert Weissman Government Center downtown, where the courthouse is, we are looking at floodproofing that building in the event that we have king tides plus a storm plus rain. So those are our big implementation projects. We also have several recommendations that the county is looking to consider, including harmonizing a shoreline ordinance that Aaron mentioned, where all the communities can have similar requirements. A stormwater master plan that will help identify if additional infrastructure is needed throughout the county. Increase urban tree canopy cover, so offsetting that heat island index. and then the shade structure installation at many parks and other public areas. All right, so now is the time for the Menti survey. So, folks online, you can either open up a browser on your phone or another browser on your computer if you're on your computer tonight, or you can scan the QR code with your phone. If you enter it in a browser, the number is 5756-1894. And we're going to have a live poll here in a few minutes. Did you guys get it in the room? Did you get the Menti going? Okay. All right. So the first question, we start with an easy one, I hope. How well do you think the Resiliency Action Plan addresses the needs of the most impacted populations in your community? And in the bottom right-hand corner, I see that 5 people, oh, you can't see it on the screen, but I can see that 5 people have joined the poll. And we have 4 answers of very well. That's good. Oh, we have 6 people now that have logged on. Great. All right. You guys are on top of it. I will go to the next question. Oh, so this is just our project implementation timeline. It just helps you kind of visualize where we are and where we think we're going. And so we have the projects listed on the left-hand side and the timeline across the top. Obviously, some projects are going to take longer than others, and the county can't start everything all at once. It would be very impossible to do that. So we kind of staggered them and evaluated kind of how the plan can be best be implemented over time. So which projects do you believe offer the highest return on investment for our community? So if they are, a costly project, is it worth it to implement those projects? All right, we have 5 out of 6 people responding, but great. Yeah, I kind of agree that all of these projects would be a good investment for the county or municipality um, to implement. Right. And which projects will make the biggest difference in your community? So we have one answer so far, but with pump station hardening at the top. See how many other answers we get in. Roadway improvements. See if we can get a few more answers in before I go to the next slide. All right. All right. Wastewater and treatment plants are moving to the top. All right. Moving on to okay. So I think we have one more question here at the end, I believe. Um, but one of the things that we wanted to um, help the county prepare was a tracking dashboard. This is a GIS or ArcView based tool, and it will be available to the public. It's used to track the progress of individual projects over time. So as they move through that system of planning, design, funding, and construction, the county can track their progress of the projects through this resiliency action plan because it's an action plan and the actions we want to implement. This will be updated over time and can be expanded to add other projects that are identified through the BRR. How do you expect these resiliency projects to improve your daily life? reduce flooding, provide heat comfort, enhance public health and safety, and protect infrastructure. So it looks like we got 5 out of 6 say all of the above. So great. Just so you know, if you would like to get additional information about the project or the reports that we've been working on or previous recordings of meetings, you can find them on the Built Environment Risk Reduction website for the county. And then we have a specific project website. It's called the Vulnerability Assessment and Resiliency Action Plan page. And from that page, you can get to a story map and a GIS viewer. And this map allows you to see, it's an interactive map and allows you to see future sea level rise projections, where extreme rainfall can accumulate across the landscape. It shows our heat maps and it has our tree canopy analysis, as well as impacts for potential for wildfire. Luckily, Palm Beach County does a great job of managing their public lands, and so there's not a big threat. Just so you know. Um, and last question: are there any resiliency needs, challenges, or priority issues that you feel are not fully addressed or are missing from the current set of the proposed projects? Workers and heat. Yeah, so we do have a couple of projects that include combating heat, specifically addressing the tree canopy and the shade. Workers and heat, is really le left to individual employers and individuals working in those conditions. There is a lot of education and safety education associated with those types of risks. And we got a no, not in at this time. So bus stops, shading at bus stops has come up through the resiliency plan and several public meetings, and the county certainly recognizes that that needs to be part of the overall efforts. So I think that's the last question that we have tonight. And so at this time, I will take any other questions you might have or comments, public comments. The county representatives are here, as well as the consultant team, and happy to answer any specific questions you might have. Online, I don't know if they need to raise their hand or just,
They can either raise their hand or send it in the chat.
okay, or send it in the chat. And we'll try and get any questions in the room in the microphone. So, nothing online? Erica.
I have a quick question about the resilience hubs. Is
Okay.
the one in the western part of the county the only one, or are you looking at other scattered sites around the county, maybe for retrofit or new hubs?
Did you want to address that?
Hi, Megan Houston, Palm Beach County. So for this project, it was something that came up with community input and extreme heat as being a concern in the western area, and I think a lack of access to indoor recreational facilities. So I think throughout the county there are Boys and Girl Scout clubs and rec centers and things like that. So it would be an idea that as a proof of concept we're looking at, and we haven't gotten board approval or any kind of funding related to that, but it would be, um, it's something that if people like that idea, they can start using that language, that terminology, right, of a resilience hub that can do um, multi, a lot of different, serve a lot of different purposes. And then, we're in our library space right now, and the library is an example of a social institution, right, that does provide services and cooling and activities and things like that. So we certainly have a lot of our libraries throughout the county, and in some jurisdictions, they refer to them as resilience hubs. Our libraries share information about climate risks and emergency management. So they, are leaning into that a little bit too. So we can think about just, social uh, buildings that provide many services to residents, which are throughout the county.
Thank you. And no questions online. So with that, I think the website address is there at the bottom of your screen. Please reach out and check out our story map and our interactive GIS mapping tools. And the county is always willing to chat more. They have a newsletter you can sign up for. So there's a lot of great stuff that the county is doing to help with the resiliency action plan. And hopefully you'll see lots of more things coming up in the future. So this is our last public meeting on the project. So see you around.